Okay, so welcome everybody to our Knowledge Bites webinar today. This is the MERP Energy Assessment Applications webinar, but we are going to review the entire Municipal Energy Resilience Program. And this is a Knowledge Bites webinar. Knowledge Bites is a program that is part of the Southern Vermont Economy Project. So we'll just dial it all the way back. The Southern Vermont Economy Project is a project that lives out of Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation, encompasses all of Southern Vermont, so both Bennington and Windham regions. And we are funded in part by a Rural Community Development Initiative grant from the USDA. Our mission is to provide trainings and webinars and resources to help connect community projects to the resources they need to complete and to make our region more economically competitive and just a better place. So that's the work you guys are all doing. So these Knowledge Bites webinars in particular, we do them at lunchtime, so you can have your camera off, eat your lunch, and these just are designed to present timely, small bites of information and connect you to resources to follow up on. So today we've got both our regional commissions. So we've got Mike McConnell and Margot Gia from Windham Regional Commission, and Callie Fishburne from Bennington Regional Commission, and we're going to talk about the Municipal Energy Resilience Program and the assessment applications. Before we get into that, though, I just want to give a quick pump up for next week's Knowledge Bites. We actually have another one scheduled. We have Ken Lynch from the Vermont Bond Agency coming in, and I know that sounds really dry, but actually he is so accessible and great, and I encourage you to just pop on and meet him. And he's going to talk about how they really partner with other state agencies to help towns fund these sort of daunting large scale projects. So he's super accessible. I never thought I would say that, but I encourage you to join because it's really, he takes a subject that may seem intimidating and makes it really easy to understand, and he's a great partner. So I've popped a link in the chat for a bunch of things. A link to register for that webinar, a link to the archives of all the Knowledge Bites recordings, and then a link where for all the Southern Vermont economy just resources, upcoming events, and all that. So you have that. With no further ado, let's turn it over and get started. So we're going to start with Mike and Margot from Windham Regional, and they're going to talk about our hang on, I'm going to get into my screen here. There we go. They're going to talk about the what's happening now, and then sort of what just happened is going to be turned over to Callie for the energy assessments. Okay, take it away, Mike.
All right, thank you. Like Meg said, my name is Mike McConnell with the Windham Regional Commission, and I'm just going to give a quick plug for one portion of the MERP program before Callie gets into kind of the meat of why everyone's here. So. Next slide, please, Meg. Thank you. So Callie, very comprehensive overview, I'm sure, during her slide. So I'll just talk about the mini grants. So it's one part of the program, up to $4,000 can be used for really any energy-related project that you have in your town. Generally speaking, they're going to be used for education and outreach purposes. But we can talk about that in 1 second. So very simple process to start the mini grant process. There's a very simple, I think, 2-page application available at this link below, the BGS website. Callie can maybe address this later on during her presentation, but I don't believe any towns have been rejected for this grant. So it's a very simple, very easy process. There's an application, you get the award, you get the money, and there's one reporting period, and that's next year. So very simple process. So if towns maybe have very, very low capacity, this is definitely something that you can manage for sure. And we can help you out with that too for free. Our time is already paid for in the overall grant program. So like I said, the application is available on the BGS website right now. If you go to the main one, there is a button for the Municipal Energy Resilience Program, or this link here will send you right there. So we're encouraging everyone that's eligible to apply, and that's going to be towns and municipalities, fire districts, The solid waste district is also eligible. So organizations like that. Next slide, please, Meg. So like I said, these are very flexible pots of money. On the BGS website, there's a list of approved uses, and they are, generally speaking, there you can hire an ADA consultant, and that's pertinent because to be eligible for the grant program, the building in question needs to be ADA compliant by the conclusion of the project. So on the front end, BGS is allowing this $4,000 to be used for an ADA assessment, and that pays for a consultant to come out and just give you a comprehensive rundown on everything that you need to do to the building to get it up to ADA compliance. We've had some towns do energy fairs. I know Wilmington did one that was at their new, I think, public safety complex, which was great. You can use it to establish an energy committee, which is a cause near and dear to Margot's heart, that's for sure. She typically works with energy committees for Windham Region. It's definitely something we encourage all towns to do, whether it's part of this process or a separate one. Get an energy committee. It's going to help you out when opportunities like this come up in the future. So you can also use the money for all the peripheral costs, translating flyers into other languages because you have a specific community in your town, printing you can hire a facilitator to come and, assist your town in figuring out what their energy goals would be, or providing, other types of education to the residents. And I took the last one directly from the BGS website. Any other effort to promote community energy resilience or establish a municipal energy resiliency plan. So that's kind of my last hurrah. It's very flexible, very easy to do. Give us a call, send us an email if you have any questions at all about the mini grants or trying to apply for one. So thank you very much.
Mike, before Callie jumps in, I just wanted to add one quick little thing that the mini grants are for education, consulting, that type of work. It is not for any implementation work. So you can't go out and pay for part of a heat pump or pay for insulation or something like that. It's not implementation. That's sort of the front end of things. So just wanted to add that, but we look forward to, we've had quite a few communities that have applied, but there's still many of you that have not. So we encourage you to reach out to either Bennington or Windham regional commissions, depending on which side of the state you're on, if you have any questions and want to know more about applying for the mini grants. So Callie,
can I ask a question before I turn it over to Callie? Because I have a question about, and we're going to get into this, but as communities are thinking about the level of assessment that they want to apply for, I wonder if they could use this funding for any kind of preparatory work. So if they need architectural studies, do you know if this money could be used for that, or does that get into that gray area of implementation and they should call you first?
I think you should probably call us first. You're getting very close to the gray area, but I do know that several towns have used the mini grant money for some architectural or civils and consultants of that type. But definitely give us a call if you have any question.
Yeah, and that's what I would say is before you do anything, check in with your regional commission. Always a great idea for so many things. But and we have another question from Gary. Let's see. Okay, so we've got a couple questions coming in. Maybe we should just take these now and then we'll move to the next step, or if it's something you're going to address. So we have Gary asking, can mini grant explore municipal battery storage facilities? And Jen McDuffie is asking, did I hear that the building we would like to be assessed has to be ADA compliant already? So those are two questions. Okay. Great questions. Take them away.
Let me answer the ADA one first. It does not have to, the building does not have to be ADA compliant right now. It has to be ADA compliant at the end of your project. So you get the mini grant, you do the assessment, then you go for the $500,000 implementation grant. And by the time those projects are done, the building has to be ADA compliant. and refresh my memory on the other question, if you would.
Yeah, that was, can mini grant explore municipal battery storage facilities?
I suppose I'd like to know more about what explore means, but generally speaking, yes, if it's related to educating about energy issues or energy goals that the town might have, generally speaking, yes, you can use it for that purpose.
And it sounds like, again, yeah, call them first.
So I think that was a question from Gary. So Gary, if you reach out directly to Mike, he can help sort of clarify that answer for you. And I just also wanted to mention about the ADA compliance that it is not applicable to the assessments. So the assessment application, you don't need to be ADA compliant. You don't need to be ADA compliant by the end of the assessments. It is only then if you go for the implementation money that the building will need some ADA work and compliance. So don't let ADA compliance stop you from the assessments. And now we're going into Callie's territory.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Callie Fishburne. I am the energy planner at the Bennington County Regional Commission. Before we get into my presentation, I'll just add a quick add-on to Jen McDuffie's question and what Margot had said too. That again, yes, the ADA compliance really will only come into play later with the implementation grants. And if ADA upgrades are determined to be necessary for your building, you could use up to 20% of an implementation grant that you receive, if you receive one, to make the necessary ADA compliance upgrades. And everything we've been told by BGS so far is that, you know, the requirement that at the end of that implementation project that you be ADA compliant, that's a self-certification process, or is going to be a self-certification process as far as we understand. But again, that really only applies when we get to the implementation grant phase, which we are not there yet. And we're here today to talk about assessments. Yeah, next slide, thank you. So this was just a general overview of the MERP program, which I think you're probably all familiar with by now. And I'll also mention too that we all did a webinar, I think back in March, specifically to talk about the mini grants and MERP. So if you want to see a little bit more content and dive deeper into the mini grant specifically, there is that webinar recording and resources that Meg mentioned is on the BDCC website with all their webinar recordings. So again, this is just an overview of the MERP program. It prioritizes municipalities with high energy burden as defined by Efficiency Vermont's energy burden report. However, if your community has been does not have a high energy burden, that does not preclude you from participating in this program. Just means you might get some priority for your application or priority scheduling for the energy assessment, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And eligibility, again, all incorporated municipalities, cities, towns, fire districts, basically everything except for school districts. Next slide, please.
Sure. Before we do that, I'm just going to take a quick ask. Jessica Roberts said she's not seeing the full PowerPoint. Is that happening for anyone else, or are you able to see it? Also, Jessica, and everybody, I'll share this PowerPoint with you afterwards. So don't worry, you'll get the full thing after. But let me know if everyone else is fine. Okay, so Jessica, I'll send it to you afterwards. You'll get it by this afternoon, so no worries. Okay.
Yeah, it's just cutting off like the last third of each page and cutting off the sentences. I can't read them.
Okay.
Okay, well, we'll get you the full thing.
If you minimize your participant screen, like showing all of our faces, if you minimize that with the little, like in the upper left corner of that, you'll probably be able to see more of the slides.
Okay, so moving on. So Mike gave an overview of the mini grants, which are available now, and the assessments are now also available. So these are the three program components. And again, the implementation grants, as we mentioned, are not available now. Our best guess, I think, is, early, fall, mid to late fall. But, we'll certainly send out updates to our towns as we get more information about that. So the energy assessments in particular, so these are free to your towns. They are conducted by BGS contractors. BGS has contracted with 4 assessment vendors, so you don't have to worry about finding your own firm or company to perform the audit. Sorry, application coming soon is a holdover from a different presentation. The application is available now. Apologies. So there are 2 levels, as you might be aware. Both levels qualify a town for an implementation grant, and one level over the other isn't necessarily seen as superior in terms of your chance of getting the implementation grant. So if you choose to get a level 1 versus a level 2, that isn't, weighed either in your favor or against you in terms of getting the implementation grant in the future. It really just depends, level 1 and level 2, on how much information you want, or how much information you want about your building, how much you have to provide, and then if you want to go for additional loans and grants. So the level 1 is a shorter, more high-level walkthrough. If any of you have had Efficiency Vermont walkthroughs on any of your buildings in the past, I think this is comparable to that. You don't need to provide any building information for the application for the level 1, unless you have it and you want to provide it, you can do so. The level 2 is more of a full audit. They'll typically do like a blower door test, if you're familiar with that, to measure, airflow, air circulation. So it will last longer. And, there's some building information that's required to be submitted with the application, which we'll get into in the next slide. And the difference here with the level 2 is that towns who get a level 2 assessment would be eligible to apply for the state's revolving energy loan program, which will be coming out. I don't believe it's active now, but sometime next year, I believe. And that's a loan program. And so if your town is interested in, number 1, just getting a more thorough report of the energy efficiency of your buildings, and you think looking to the future that you want to try and go for this loan program when it's available, then the level 2 would be for you. And just a reminder that the buildings have to be either municipally owned or have a long-term perpetual lease by the municipality to be eligible. And there are no reporting requirements for the assessments. All billing takes place between BGS and the contractors. So, the contractor will come out and perform the assessment and give you a report, but you won't be getting an invoice or a bill or anything like that. That will all take place between buildings and general services and the contractors. So a little bit more information about the level 2. As I said, there is some additional information you need to submit. There's some required documents. They need 3 years of electrical and electricity and fuel use data. They'll take a minimum of 12 consecutive months of data if you don't have 3 years of utility and fuel use data. They'd like to see mechanical and electrical drawings, architectural drawings, and lighting schedules. The important thing to focus on here is that the utility and fuel use data is, the absolute requirement. So if you don't have the other things like the mechanical plans and drawings and, lighting schedules, those are important and would be, really good to have if you do have them. But if you don't, as long as you have, the fuel use and utility data, you can still apply for a level 2. So next slide, please. So the application process, the application is available now on the BGS website. The one application form allows you to apply for up to 5 municipal buildings in one application, and you can mix and match, if you will. So if you have 5 buildings and you want 2 of them to get a level 1 and 3 to get a level 2, you can indicate that in the same application. It's not a separate application for level 1 versus level 2. So the application is just pretty standard. A lot of the same like information you might have filled out for the mini grant in terms of like general municipal information. Then it will ask you for some specifics about the buildings, you know, like the address of, you know, the building, the name of it, approximate square footage, a contact person for that building if it's not, you know, the same person filling out the application. And you'll go through that process for each of the buildings you want to apply for, up to 5. And so once you have submitted your application, you will be emailed a link to upload the required documents if you're applying for a level 2 into an online SharePoint folder. If you have any difficulties with this, you know, your regional planning commission, so that would be either me or Mike or Margot, are available to help with this. BGS is also giving us access to these online SharePoint folders. So if you're having difficulty uploading documents, you can reach out to us and we can help you. Again, I think you'll also get emailed this link to upload even if you applied for a level 1, because you can still upload documents if you want, although that's completely optional. With the level 2, again, there's some flexibility on some of the, you know, mechanical and, you know, architectural plans, but, you know, you do need to have that utility and fuel use data. And also, if there's a question on the application to indicate if you had a previous energy audit completed on the building within the last 5 years. So if you indicate that you do have that, you can also upload it to that SharePoint folder that you'll receive a link to. So next slide. So these are just a couple of like recommendations, tips and tricks, if you will. So the application does not save. It's not something where you can save as a draft and come back to it later. You do need to fill it out completely and submit it before closing out, or you'll lose your work essentially. And again, it doesn't, you know, take too long, as long as you know which buildings and you've got like the address and, you know, the square footage. It shouldn't take too long to fill it out. Please check to make sure that you receive a confirmation email when you hit submit on the application. You know, check your spam folder, and yeah, make sure that you received that confirmation email. It should include a copy of, you know, the responses that you submitted in your application. So this is also important. The person who is most knowledgeable about each building and has keys and access to the mechanical room should be present for the actual assessment. So once those get scheduled, you should make sure that, you know, the person with the key to the building is there to actually let the contractors into the building. And the contractors are most likely going to want to, you know, chat with this person for, you know, at the beginning and end of the assessment to ask questions about the building. So make sure that whoever, you know, is knowledgeable about the HVAC and heating systems for whatever building that you're getting assessed is available and there, you know, when the assessment is actually getting scheduled. So also, you know, as Mike said, you know, our time has been funded through this program to help you. So please feel free to reach out to your regional planning commissions for help with, you know, any aspect of the program, whether, you know, you are still deciding which buildings and what levels you want to do for those buildings. You know, we can help talk you through that and figure out which would be best for you. If you want to actually sit and, you know, have us help you fill out the application, happy to do that. Again, if you need help uploading documents to the SharePoint folder, we can help with that. And I think depending on our capacity, once we actually get to the time of scheduling assessments, which BGS is currently setting up the scheduling system for that now and working out sort of the logistics of how that will work. Depending on RPC capacity, we might be able to be, excuse me, present for some of those assessments. But again, that will depend on RPC capacity. And again, the program has a list, email list that you can sign up for on their page, on their homepage, to be notified of things like when applications become available. And sorry, excuse me. So one other quick thing I wanted to mention, that this was just, we just received clarification from BGS about this, I think yesterday. So I apologize, it is not reflected in the slides. They have put a deadline on the assessment application of October 31st of this year. So that might be different than some of, any other messaging you might have received. But please keep that in mind. October 31st still gives you plenty of time to apply. You don't have to immediately do it today. But that is important because they want to, try and start to get these scheduled and make sure they can be completed in a timely manner. So please keep October 31st, 2023 in your mind for making sure that if you want an assessment, you get your application in before then. Okay, and again, yeah, please reach out to us. I think most of the folks I've seen on this call are in Windham County, so you would be reaching out to Mike or Margot, but if there's anyone from Bennington County on here that I missed or didn't see, you can reach out to me.
So there's a couple of questions in the chat that we've partially answered, but just to make sure, there was a question about what are mechanical drawings and lighting schedules. So from Mike, I don't know if you want to elucidate more, but Mike has answered that mechanical drawings show your heating system and how it distributes through the building. If you don't have that, but have information on your heating unit, that can be good information too. And then for lighting schedules, the following items: the number and type of lights that you have in your building, and the approximate usage, like the duration and frequency, or if you have things set on timers, or if it's like our office is open from 9 to 5. And if you have had previous walkthroughs, you may have some of that information. I'm not sure if you would or not, but do you any other answers to that? Do you guys want to elucidate further on any of that? Or does that seem good? And there's also a great question here from Jessica about what if we have several municipal buildings and the fuel usage for each building was not tracked independently? So how do you find that? So I think, that might be where you maybe put in a call to your energy provider, or take a look back at the bills and find out, maybe call your, call the provider if you have that they just sort of do delivery and they don't tell you which tank they filled. They should have that somewhere, I would guess. And then here's a great question. And so maybe that Helen asked, they sent their invoice for the mini grant. When do they expect to see funds? And does it come as a check? Do they ask for banking information? So does anyone from a town that's gotten a mini grant want to comment, or do our regional commission partners know about that?
Well, I can say that I don't believe, Callie, correct me if I'm wrong, but nobody has yet received actual physical money. It will be coming by a check, not directed into your bank account. So they did process, some of you may have noticed, if you've applied for the mini grants and you were in the very first sort of wave of mini grants that were submitted, when you received your contract to sign, it also said you had to invoice BGS for the $4,000. If your contract says that, make sure to submit a very basic invoice for $4,000, and then they can process it. If you were not in the first wave, your contract will not include that invoice language, so you don't have to send in an invoice. It's just for that first wave. They did away with it. It was holdover from an earlier draft.
And Helen, can I ask what town you're from?
Is Helen still with us? Helen, what town are you from? Oh, Dover.
Dover.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks, Helen.
I asked because we had just sent an email to BGS's new grants and finance management person to ask for an updated list of towns and where they are in terms of signing and receiving invoices. And I just got a list. I don't think I've shared it with the other energy planners yet. So sorry, Margot and Mike, you haven't seen this yet. So I'm just going to check because they highlighted the ones they received Yep, Dover's highlighted. So this list that was just provided this morning has a list of towns, and highlighted towns are ones they've received invoices from, and the invoices were processed today, July 19th. And according to this email I received, municipalities whose invoices they have received and processed should expect to have funds sent to them within 7 business days. So I assume that means the check will be mailed within 7 business days. I don't know if that actually means you will have it in hand within 7 business days. And yes, Dover was highlighted. So they've received the invoice from Dover. So hopefully for those towns that have sent in invoices should be getting their checks very soon.
And
before we
Helen,
get
I
to-
would say, oh yeah, I was just gonna say, Helen is mentioning that she's there, the fire district. So Helen, just maybe check in. I'm sure Callie will send that email right to Mike and Margot. So maybe just check in with them after the call.
Somebody
then-
said, can you read Windham County highlighted towns? So the list we were given, or at least I was given, again, I will send this to Mike and Margo. I mash up your names sometimes, I apologize, right after this, because it's just a straight list of towns, and I'm not sure, not being from Windham County, I can't identify which ones are Windham versus not. But I will forward this email to Mike and Margo, and they can reach out to you to confirm if you have received, if your invoice has been one of the ones that's been received and processed by BGS. So apologies, that just came in this morning. And
I want to also mention, because I know that at least one of our communities, a very early submitter for the mini grants, they had programming that started before they got the check. And as long as you may start to expend money with the start date that is on your contract. So even though you haven't received money, if you are up against some deadlines that, and the start date has already come and gone, you can start expending money. And then basically when you get the check, you're just reimbursing yourself for those expenditures. Just make sure to keep track of what you're spending things on and the amount, because you will be asked to report on that at the end of the state fiscal year.
So just another question here in the chat from Kathy was that, is there a way to go back and look at an application that has submitted? So Kathy, are you referencing an assessment application or the mini grant application?
The mini grant.
Got it.
Because we haven't submitted the other one yet, but I probably would have the same question.
Kelly, I'm not sure about the mini grants. I don't believe they can go back and see those.
No. So I guess the question would be, when you applied, and I guess again, unfortunately, because they have, been rolling out this program and fixing, bugs as they come up. I think if you applied for the mini grant earlier on, they may not have yet set up the system to send you a copy of your responses at the time. Whereas if you applied later, they had then gone into the back end and figured out a way to send you your responses so you could see what you put in. I don't know if that answers the question.
Kelly, my question is, I can't remember when we were doing it, you know how it asked for one kind of contact and another kind of contact. And we had a discussion while we were filling it out. And now I can't remember which person we put for which role. So could I call them and ask them? I just want to make sure that we have the right people watching for information.
Right. So we have RPCs have access to a spreadsheet that shows all of the mini grant applications. I believe the spreadsheet also shows the municipal contact information that was entered. So
Great.
I think,
yeah.
So you could reach out to Mike or Margot, and they can check the spreadsheet and see for your town which contacts were entered in the application.
Perfect. Thank you.
So there's another great question here from Jessica saying she has a lot of research to do as all this info is not organized like bills and plans. I'm sure many of you are in that same situation. So is there a deadline? So we know the application deadline is the end of October, but the question is like, are they going to run out of funding? Is there anything to be gained by trying to get it in earlier than later? Or is the feeling that everybody who wants an assessment will get an assessment and you have till the end of October? Any thoughts on that?
Most of what we're being told by BGS is that funding is not an issue. They've got plenty of money to do assessments. I think about $5 million. That is a lot of money to get a lot of buildings assessed. It's not really first come, first serve. In terms of like what might come into play is depending on your energy burden, you might receive priority scheduling. I don't know, Jessica, I believe you're representing Wilmington. I don't know Wilmington's energy burden off the top of my head. Sorry, it's not one of my towns. But, you know, if Wilmington has, you know, a high energy burden or then you might receive priority scheduling. So you'd be more likely to maybe get your assessment scheduled sooner over a town that doesn't have a high energy burden. But in terms of, you know, applying and sending in your application, it's not really first come, first serve. And at this point, I wouldn't, you know, worry about funds running out.
Great. Anyone else have questions they'd like to ask while we're live? Or obviously you can follow up. We've got the contact on the screen there. I left it up there, so you guys can just have that, take it. I'll send this all out obviously right after. So if there's any other questions you want to drop in. And let's see, there's, oh yes, Jessica, this is the efficiencyvermont.com white papers, Vermont energy burden. Is this what they've used to do the determining who is energy burdened? I believe that is linked on the MERP webpage.
Yes,
too.
yeah, the full report is also linked on the MERP page, but yes, that link, Jessica, is where they're pulling their information from. It's Efficiency Vermont's 2019 energy burden report.
And Jessica, Wilmington is considered a high energy burden town.
Great. Okay, any other specific questions? It's really fun to be sharing a program where we're like, yes, take your time, do your application, there's funding. It's so one of the nice things about this program is it's very ecumenical. It seems to fit a lot of people's needs. I think the idea was to really reach a lot of communities, and so I think that's sort of being borne out in the execution where there's flexibility and you know, availability of funds. So, you know, may this be a model for future programs, we think. It's really nice to see that. So I guess we'll just leave it there. And Callie, Margot, and Mike are 100% accessible for you for this program. If you need any help, so reach out to them, and we thank them for being here today and all the work they've put into this program. So if there aren't any other questions, I'll just say one more time, check the chat if anyone's interested in learning more about the Vermont Bond Bank, just in kind of a light and introductory way, and just sort of putting a face to the agency. Join us next week at about the same time. So thank you, everybody. Now I just have to find my meeting controls and we'll log off. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone, and reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Now I found all my meeting controls. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Meg.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Callie.
Bye.